Welcome back to Raising Game Changers podcast. Today we have a special guest with us, Ian Hart, the author of Healing Hacks. Hey, Ian.
Thanks you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you, man. Thank you for coming through. And by the way, your book that I'm reading right now, I was reading it for preparation for this pod, is mind-blowing. It is actually going to be one of the books that I'll be sending to people who, I have this fetish. Like, I send people books on Amazon to make it easy. So, like, if I want to educate you on something, I'll just buy 3 books for you and just send it over to you.
Right.
Anybody now who actually wants to learn about holistic ways to heal themselves, this is the GOAT book for me. I actually haven't read a better book on healing and the information you provide in there. I know Wim Hof's book's pretty good, but it's more of his story than like healing information. You know, this book actually is mind-blowing. So I want to talk to you about a few things from that book, but first I want to talk to you about your story, because your story is interesting. You know, you were a serious athlete, and then you were in pretty, ugly predicament with your health.
Yeah.
Kind of like driven by that athletic drive of yours. So can you talk a little bit about that to our audience so they understand your backstory to this?
Yeah. And just to touch on the book, it was 500 pages long.
Oh, wow.
And the publisher whittled it down to 250.
Yeah, because nobody read a 500-page book.
Yeah, exactly. So they probably want it to be less. So there's more information. I'll probably publish more. But yeah, so I grew up as an athlete. And this is one of the things today that I think is super important is no one told me, hey, your gift is that you know how to move and that you're an athlete. And
Right.
like that was like my natural gift. And I was always told like go to school, get a degree, get a business degree, go into business. And if someone told me what my gift was, I might have had a different trajectory from the beginning. In the end, I ended up where I was supposed to be.
Right.
But my path got diverted. And so, so I was an athlete my whole life. And I got into the fitness business professionally when I was 26 after going through like accounting and marketing and doing all that. And I got like a desk job and it just wasn't for me.
And that was also after the Army, right? You went to Marine Corps.
So I went to officers training for the military, or for the Marine Corps. And I actually declined my commission as an officer,
Right.
which was one of the toughest decisions I made. But after that, I knew there was no desk job for me. And so that is when I got into training. That's when I said like, hey, I know personally I have to be doing something physically, whether it's like playing a sport or doing something. Someone said, hey, you'd be a great trainer. And I thought to myself, yeah, I could actually see myself doing that. And when I started doing it, it just came natural. It clicked. Like I started at Equinox. You were talking about training there. That's where I started, and things just exploded from there. Like I became number 2 in the whole company, and this is in the nation within a few months.
Wow. That's a big company too.
Yeah, and it was actually the top in personal training. It's like one of the best. I don't know how it is now, but then it was the leader in personal training and bringing in revenue and bringing in clients and stuff like that. And going through their system is kind of like getting a master's degree, actually.
So you had to go through Equinox actual training to become a leader of trainers.
Yeah, so you have to go through the education system, and there's like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and then they go on to like even more advanced. So I went through that whole process, and then after a while, they brought me on as a manager. And so then I started training and hiring trainers and leading trainers. And then they took me and started using me as like the cleanup guy. So like they sent me to, at first I started at Park Avenue location. Then they sent me up to Upper East Side. And
So the fancy locations.
Yeah, it was a bigger
locations.
location. It had more trainers. It had more revenue. They were doing like $200,000 a month, whereas like Park Avenue was doing like $70,000 a month.
Yeah, I worked out at what used to be called the Reebok Center. Then they took over, Equinox took over that Reebok Center.
Where was that?
On the Upper West Side, on 69th and Columbus.
Yeah, I know that one. Oh yeah, that's
gigantic 6-story building.
Yeah.
And Equinox took over, and they made it nice.
Yeah.
Way better than
That's
Reebok
where
used
they
to
had
be.
their tier 4 center. So like the tier 4 was like the super high, like paid the high prices.
Yeah, I seen a bunch of superstars actually there all the time working out. Regis Philbin, the guy who used to run that show on ABC, was working out there religiously. I saw him.
Yeah.
That's the one I used to go to. Let me ask you this question about the marathon you ran, because I've never heard that uh, Uber marathon or something.
Oh,
Urban.
Urbanathlon.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
said they were jumping over cars in your book. Like,
Yeah.
what kind of marathon is that? You go up
So
and down building stairs.
yeah, so for me that's like right up my alley because I was good at obstacles and stuff, but I was good at running and I was good at like. So I thought, oh, this is a great race for me. And actually, I wrote the training programs in Men's Health magazine, and I was being interviewed for doing the programs. And so I had this. My ego was tied to it,
Right.
and it was like I wrote the programs, and now I'm going to win the race. And I got sick 2 weeks before, and I still decided to run it, not to win it, but I said like, oh, I'm still going to run it anyways. And that was the beginning of the downfall of my health.
Now, do you think the downfall was due to overtraining or malnutrition or all of the above?
So
You also got a battery of vaccinations when you were in the program for the Marine Corps.
yeah,
That couldn't have been good, especially because they bunch it all at once and you, which we know it's not natural for a human body to get that dose
absolutely.
of disease
Yeah.
punched in you.
So there's probably a underlying foundation of all of this, and those things stacked on top of it. Like I had cavitations, which were I had my wisdom teeth pulled out, and they got infections there, and they're like pockets of infection.
Right.
And then I had my whole mouth was lined with mercury fillings.
Yeah, I'm going.
So those two things are very stressful on the body. Then when you are working and training and working and training, minerals are being stolen from your body. And so your body's not getting enough minerals and the stress of just living in the city. So I was like
Always
living
there.
in the city, training really hard, working 14 hours a day. And then I had these hidden infections, which I still have 2 of them. I have to get surgery on them. And so these are hidden stressors that you don't know about.
Right.
And so I ran the race, I got walking pneumonia, and then I was given antibiotics for it, and the antibiotics weren't approved for the market. And that's really where things went downhill because it was like, they say antibiotics is like the atom bomb. Well, it was for me. It destroyed my gut, and my life just changed dramatically after that.
One of the biggest shocks to me, and by the way, I witnessed it in my own life, that when you went to the hospital, literally they diagnosed you, thankfully, that doctor caught it on the way out, right, with twisted intestines. And at the same time, they were still feeding you garbage. I mean, we're talking about a hospital.
Yeah.
And I've learned that in my own life. When my dad was in the hospital, I could never understand why they're bringing him this food. This is literally poison.
Right.
This is the hospital. They give you Jell-O and they give you burgers, or not burgers, but none of it was good, healthy food.
Yeah.
I could never compute that. The same thing, I have a problem with schools here.
Yeah.
That schools here, they poison kids with the food they sell inside the schools in lunch programs.
Yep.
Could never get that. I still don't get that. I pulled my kid out of the schools for other reasons, but this was
Right.
one of the reasons that used to infuriate me in the United States.
Right.
Even when he was going to a private school in New York City, he was going to one of the best private schools, Basis. Still, the food was nonsense. We used to give him lunch with him all the time because he could never eat. I wouldn't want him to eat. And still, the peer pressure was there. They had this pizza day, they had this day. And I'm like, I know this is not good for you, especially for developing body.
Absolutely.
So the question for you is, let's first finish about your story. Like, how did you come out of this? Like, what was the healing process that you went through in order to fix the downward spiral of health you were in?
Oh man. Well,
I mean, it's a long journey. I get it.
it's a
but
long
like,
journey, and I'm still in the process of healing. And so, oh man, the first thing was the waking up and having to come to the realization that the medical system is not designed to help me get better. And so when that happened, that was my real first awakening.
Yes.
And that opened me up to everything else. So I started going down all these rabbit holes because I went to doctor after doctor after doctor, and they all wanted to do the same thing. Look at my blood. And I'll never forget when I got the blood taken. I probably wrote this in the book.
It is in the book.
Yeah. So I got my blood taken, and the nurse comes back to me and goes, "Oh my God.
Great markers.
Yeah, your numbers. I wish I had these markers."
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there thinking like, okay, that's the end of the road for the medical system for me because they don't know how to help me.
When the industrialized medical system we have, it's not meant to cure anything. It's just meant to treat it forever. And first, it's He's like, you don't want to go down the conspiracy rabbit hole, but you can't help yourself because, like, first we make people sick and then we keep them sick,
Yep.
by treating them forever instead of actually having the cures. Like, when COVID hit, first thing I had to look into, like, well, and that's when I found Wim Hof, and then later I met you.
Right.
But my journey went through, like, is there anything I can do to weaponize my own neurobiology?
Right.
And then I found immediately Wim Hof, right?
Yeah.
First thing. Then I learned about autophagy.
Yeah.
And in October of 2020, I went through 5 days fasting, just water fast.
Right.
I have never felt better in my life after that water fast. I lost 23 pounds. My skin looked like I was 15 years old.
Yep.
I've learned all that from real doctors like Dr. Peter Attia, who goes on Joe Rogan's.
Yep.
And now, thankfully, because of the access to real good information, thanks to this podcast and YouTube, Dr. Andrew Huberman, Peter Attia, they speak out on these matters, I can actually educate myself. And then as I'm learning this, I'm realizing these fucking doctors here don't know shit.
Yep.
Or if they do, they're not good doctors.
Yeah.
They're like kind of like evil if they're not telling me. And then we had an experience recently with Sky where I realized, okay, not all doctors are this way, because we went to a hospital. Sky plays hockey, so he developed a worm in his hand from like being in a sweaty glove all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was. So I went to a hospital, and the doctor in the hospital, he was like 65 years old, maybe older.
Yeah.
This very fit gentleman.
Yeah.
He kept telling me these things and the answers, and he would always tell me, well, that's what they want you to do, but I wouldn't do it. Yeah. So every time I asked him a question, he gave me the answer, and he would follow that by saying, that's what they want me to tell you, but I wouldn't do it.
Right.
I love that doctor because he kept telling me, like, I'm supposed to tell you this, but I wouldn't do it.
Right.
Everything he told me, he followed up by that statement, but I wouldn't personally do it.
Right.
And I'm like, all right, this is a real doctor. But it made me also realize he has to say this shit to me.
Yeah.
Even though he knows
It's the standard of care. If you don't follow the standard,
he'll lose his
care,
license.
Yeah.
He knows it's not good for my son to do this, and he has to answer these questions to me. And thankfully, he would follow up, but I wouldn't personally do it.
Yeah.
That shows me that an honest doctor still is bound by this dogmatic practice of Western medicine, even though we know today what nutrition can do for you.
Yep.
We know what autophagy can do for you.
Yep.
There's now centers in Long Island where you can get on a IV, and they keep people on autophagy up to 40 days.
Wow.
This dude was on Tom Bilyeu's podcast. Tom Bilyeu has another podcast called Health. His main podcast is Impact Theory, so he's got Health Theory.
Yeah.
So this dude was on Health Theory, the guy who runs this clinic, and he was talking about the transformation they do with people in those fasting periods, up to 40 days.
Yeah.
Literally they can cure. There's this dude, his website I think is Cure Cancer with Mike, something like that. So I'm not sure how true this is, but there are thousands of people on that website. The testimonials are there that they've beat cancer through autophagy.
Yep.
They've kind of like starved cancer.
Yep.
So not a medical doctor. Don't advise anybody to do it, but it's something to look into.
Yeah, absolutely.
That the medical community today treats cancer with chemo or they cut it out.
Yep.
Right. And if you can actually,
or they do an autopsy and then just poison you more.
You know what I mean?
That's what happens. People go get autopsy and they stick it in, and then the cancer.
But before you do it, shouldn't you try to do holistic methods of starving it first?
Absolutely.
That would be like the first thing I would do if I, God forbid, got something like that.
There's so many methods to curing cancer. I mean, there's different like. So, in the book, I talk about like parasites.
Right.
Yeah, parasites. So a lot of people will kill the parasites or the fungus, and the cancer disappears. And so. That's one way. Another is coffee enemas, and that's like a proven system. There's the Gerson therapy that has coffee enemas because coffee enemas increases glutathione up to 800%.
Really?
It activates the liver. Yeah, and so glutathione is the master antioxidant. So when that skyrockets, it gobbles up all of the toxins, and then you can also flush stuff out of your liver.
Yeah.
And it regulates hormones.
I started taking glutathione after the pandemic started because I followed Dr. Ben Lynch.
Yeah.
And he talked about right away that everybody would take glutathione, you wouldn't have all these deaths.
Yeah,
so I'm like,
taking glutathione, I've experimented with.
It's weird.
I've actually tested it on our trainees. We did nanoglutathione, but the reason why I push for coffee enemas,
it's a natural way to boost it versus intake.
Exactly.
And you don't know how your body's going to react.
Right.
Ben Greenfield does enemas, he said, about once every couple of weeks he does coffee enema.
Yeah.
And
there's some people that say like just to live in our society and be healthy, once a week is necessary.
Wow.
Yeah, because
Just because of all the toxins we're
like
taking.
you were talking about before, we were talking about the phthalates.
Yeah.
Like the amount of toxins we're consuming and taking in. It's like just to keep your liver healthy now.
All right, babe, get ready. I'm gonna start doing coffee enemas now because I'm all in this stuff, man. I've poisoned my body so much throughout my life with various things that I've done, and then once I discovered, well, first Natalia, she's a yogi, so she did ayahuasca many times, right?
Yeah.
But I did ayahuasca once for the first time. It was about a year ago, maybe a little more. It blew my mind,
Right.
right? And then I discovered psilocybin,
Yep.
and the second I discovered psilocybin, I'm like, why isn't everybody doing this?
Right.
You know, not only this, you wouldn't have all this PTSD. Well, you have PTSD, but you could fix it or at least, work on that.
Right.
But you wouldn't have all these medical prescriptions that are terrible, SSRIs.
Right.
In my family, we lost a kid. My nephew's cousin, so he's not relative to me. He's my nephew's cousin on the maternal side.
Yep.
He committed suicide at the age of 18 because he was SSRIs from the age of 11. You know, so this is, if this kid knew, if their parents knew of the power of psilocybin back then, he would be still alive today.
Yep.
I 100% believe in that.
Yep.
You know, and yet there's a good theory behind all this. The same theory why marijuana was put on Schedule 1. Do you know why marijuana is Schedule 1 drug?
Yeah, I went down that rabbit hole.
Stephen Hirsch. So back in last century, right? Back in 1938, there was an article published in Popular Mechanics. It's called The $1 Billion Hemp. How hemp was this magnificent plant, and it's going to revolutionize because it's much better than paper.
Yeah.
It's going to revolutionize everything. I think they listed 20-some thousand of uses of hemp because you can literally build this table from hemp.
You build houses.
It would weigh nothing and it would be way more durable.
Yeah.
Right? It's this magnificent plant, which is marijuana, which is the male, right, of cannabis.
Yep.
Male plant. So William Randolph Hearst was a paper magnate. He was a newspaper tycoon who owned all these paper mills.
Yep.
This would be the end of his empire. So he literally bribed most of the Congress in order to ban that and put it on Schedule 1. That's why marijuana
And
is.
then they started the PR of how
And then the PR came, that is the minorities, they use it and they abuse it and they go crazy. That was all a PR campaign to justify classifying it as Schedule 1. Which to me, I know some people might have adverse effects to it for sure, but that's why we need to study it because there are also phenomenal effects of that.
Right.
When they decriminalize it, now they legalize it. Like I go to a dispensary in Massachusetts and I buy those tablets, the 5 milligram ones.
Right.
They're phenomenal. And also, forget the THC part of it. How about just straight up without what's the other one? The marijuana byproduct, but without the THC.
CBD?
CBDs.
Yeah.
How about the amazing property of CBDs? You have problem with sleep? Take CBDs instead of sleeping pills. So once I learned about why marijuana was made illegal, it made the whole sense in the world to me why would psilocybin be illegal? Because it would wipe out trillions of profits for the big pharma industries.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard I've been in some mastermind groups and I've heard people say that everybody in Silicon Valley is microdosing. It's
Absolutely.
like if you aren't microdosing, you're behind on the times.
Yeah.
Because it just gives you that edge to be more creative. And like you talking about, like the prefrontal cortex in kids is not active. Well, when the prefrontal cortex gets damaged, you have lost your cognitive ability. And so what it does is it lights up the nerves and the pathways in the prefrontal cortex. So right away, you just become more conscious.
Absolutely. Well, we actually plan to do, and I want to ask you a question about like how do you apply all this knowledge to raising your own children? With my children, we plan to do a ceremony with Sky when he's 13. We're being cautious, I think, about that. Like maybe we don't have to wait till he's 13.
Right.
But we decided, okay, you know what? Let's be a little bit traditional about that because just be on the little safer side.
Yeah.
And do a mild ceremony with him of psilocybin when he's 13. Introduce him to that because he's got phenomenal regenerative brain-derived neurotropics that it does and all these beautiful things that it does with your brain. Not even to talk about going down the rabbit hole of the theory of evolution. There is a theory of the stone ape. I'm sure you're familiar with that theory. How? No?
Maybe.
So Terry McKenzie is his name, the guy that's big on the psilocybin, who actually talked about it a lot. So his theory of evolution is that how basically the way we evolved from chimps to humans is because psilocybin. They would just go out.
Through their brain.
Yeah, it would happen is like they would see these mushrooms, they would eat it, they would trip balls, and eventually they would actually like the prefrontal cortex started developing.
Yeah.
We are 98% DNA is identical to chimps.
Right.
Our difference is prefrontal cortex.
Yep.
And he theorized that the development of that happened because they just ate mushrooms.
Yeah.
Because they were looking for food. and that sparked the growth of prefrontal cortex, and that's what separated us from chimps. So that's the stoned ape theory.
Right.
But there's a lot of evidence to suggest right now that psilocybin is phenomenal for brain activity and for growth and for healing.
Absolutely.
And as far as you're talking about, like in Silicon Valley, it's almost a requirement. There's a phenomenal book by Stephen Kotler called Stealing Fire.
Yes.
I love that book.
Yeah.
You know, and he talks about but not just them. I mean, we're talking about Navy SEALs that use all these psychedelics and MDMA now in order to treat PTSD, in order to be able to get into flow states and learn fast.
I met a guy down in, where was I? In Peru, in Iquitos. And he was 30 years in special operations. And you could see it on his face and in his body. I mean, like, when you looked at this guy, you would know he had seen some crazy stuff. And for 6 years, he lived by himself, couldn't really talk to anybody, and was drinking a lot. Then he stopped drinking, and then he ended up in this ayahuasca retreat, and it changed his entire life to the point where he lived down there, and all he was doing was preparing to take other vets
down this rabbit hole, down this road.
Just to heal their brain and get them, because he went from like being retracted or isolated to mentally sick to all of a sudden loving everything and loving the world. And so, so it's pretty profound. I've definitely changed since I've written the book, I've kind of changed my opinion a little bit about it, and to use it when it's needed, and it is a tool, and it's only, for me, this is how I look at it. It's a tool when it's needed, or when someone's called to do it and someone feels inspired to do it. And that's,
so not as a prophylactic, but rather as a treatment.
Yeah, just as like anything else, like, an ice bath is a tool.
Yes.
All these things are just tools in a toolbox, and there's ways that you can get the similar results, right? So if you meditate every day and you do it a specific way, and you can heal your brain just like you can.
When I started meditating a while, I'll tell you this bunker story. So in 2017, first of all, my transformation started when my son was born, 2014. Like before that, I was doing drugs. I was taking Adderall, popping them like Skittles.
Right.
Then 2014 comes around. I'm like, okay, well, I have a son now. I have to be a father now. So I have to actually transform myself because I have to lead by example.
Right.
At that time, all I knew about good parenting is leading by example. Because I grew up with a dad who would teach me stuff but not do it. So I never did it. So I realized that do as I say but not do as I do just doesn't work. Right. Then when I started learning about how we learn, I'm like, okay, that's why it doesn't work, because 80% of everything that our brain processes is visual.
Right.
So if I don't see you doing it, doesn't matter what you're telling me through my audio sensory input. It's about like 3 to 4% of that. It's just not going to work.
Right.
If I don't see it with my own eyes. We're
mimickers.
We're mimickers. Yeah. We mimic our parents and everybody that comes into our world at that early age.
Yeah.
So then in 2017, Ray Dalio published his book. It's right there. It's literally one of my top 5 books, Principles.
Yeah.
And he's doing this tour promoting the book. And in this tour, he's talking to a guy named Meditation Bob. That's his nickname. I forgot his last name, Bob Roth. And in that interview, Bob asked him this question: what is your secret for success? And his answer blew my mind. He said, my number one secret for success. I expected some kind of like genius answer, some kind of like, this is the trick for finance. Because this guy went from zero to a billionaire. He built Bridgewater Associates, one of the biggest hedge funds in the world.
Right.
One of the most successful hedge funds in the world.
Right.
And he said the answer is transcendental meditation.
Yep.
And when I learned that, I'm like, and Natalia is a yogi, so she meditates. But I'm like, babe, what's transcendental meditation? She's like, I don't know. So I had to go and look into it, and I had to go to training downtown Manhattan for 4 days to start doing the meditation. And I do it, and it changed my life. I supposed to do it twice a day.
Right.
I don't.
Yeah.
I do it at least once a day.
There's a lot of really successful people, famous people that we know that have been doing it for 20 years, and it stacks on top of it.
Jerry Seinfeld is one of them. There's a lot of people
Howard
that do
Stern.
Howard Stern.
Yeah.
Transcendental meditation. So I started doing it, and one of the things that I've noticed is that I'm a better parent for it. It just gives me this, not infinite patience, but way more patience. I used to be this trigger guy, I would fly off the wheel, which is not good for parenting, because kids will test you, and then I would always hate myself for it. Like, oh no, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have said that. And so when I started meditating, I'm like, oh, thank God I have this tool now. And sometimes I will do it midday because I'm like, I got to calm down. So I go and do it for like 10 minutes at least. Supposed to do 20 minutes. I know if I do it for at least 10 minutes, I'm already much better human being right after that.
Right.
It just calms me down. And then I discovered cold showers, which is, I don't have a cold bath here. I want to sit up and do cold plunges. But I've learned that even with cold showers, you can mimic a lot of these effects.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really amplified it for me is when I listened to Huberman. When Huberman talked about the fact why cold plunges is such a powerful thing, besides all the physiological benefits, what happens is when you get out of it, your body flushes you with dopamine because like you ended this pain. Remember how you did it. Here's all this dopamine you need in order to remember how you did it. So I'm like, wait a second. I've been to a cold shower where I got to when you're eating ice cream and you get this frozen thing. So I'm like, I can do that in the shower. So now I take showers where I literally stay there until it's painful to my head. I have this and then I pull away from it, and then this wave of euphoria comes over me.
Yep.
Like, oh. So I do it 3 times.
Yep.
The first time I can do it for maybe 20 seconds. The third time I maybe 40 seconds. And the third time, definitely over a minute.
Yep.
Where I stand there. So the whole thing takes about 7 minutes of standing. And when I come out, like you wrote in your book, this dude that actually realized, I'm hot. I come out of the shower, I'm burning hot after a 7-minute cold shower, which is completely opposite, right? But that's what. So I've discovered that tool.
And that's strength training for your whole cardiovascular system.
And for me, it's also good because I think it amplifies my thermogenesis. And I used to be much, much fatter.
Yep.
Now I'm like staying in this level where I'm like, I'm not as good as I want to be, but I'm nowhere near where I was, where I was like really badly overweight.
Right.
And I'm trying to get my son into it, even though it's hard with him.
Yeah.
Because he just like doesn't get it yet and he hates the process of it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, every time wintertime we here live by the lake, I go into cold plunges, he'll go with me.
Oh, nice.
And he'll dive into freezing water.
Wow.
And come out. And he'll feel the benefits of it. But again, it's leading, right? It's mimicking.
Yeah.
He sees me doing some crazy shit, like, I got to do it too.
Yep.
With him, it's easy. All you got to do is you got to dare him. He's got this spite in him that if you tell him you can't do something, he'll definitely do it, which I also understand later in life might be a really big problem for him. So I got to go make sure he understands that it's a double-edged sword.
It could be a good thing, though.
It could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing if somebody else dares you to do something stupid and you do it. But let's talk about how we apply all that knowledge that we've gained now to raising kids because I believe the future will demand them to be superhumans. Right, I believe the only way to raise successful children is what I call weaponized neurobiology, because social media is here to stay.
Yeah,
we also have brain-to-computer interfaces coming, and they're inevitable. There's nothing anybody can do about their inevitable part of being of our life.
Right.
So I believe a weaponized neurobiology, understanding your own body and using that, understanding the tools you have to weaponize it to a next level, is the only way to separate yourself from the sheep that. Well, it's always been this way. 98% of the population have always been followers, not leaders. And unfortunately, that's just the way life is. I look at it as a stoic approach. I can't change it. Just deal with it, right? Don't try to change the world. Just teach your kids how to deal with it. So how do you apply the knowledge that you have right now, the enormous database of information you have about weaponizing neurobiology, understanding the importance of 0 to 7, in how that it becomes the filter through which you see the rest of your life until maybe later you have the chance to reprogram yourself. But for a large majority of 7 to 20, you will be seeing the world through the lens that your parents instill in you in 0 to 7. How do you apply that to raising your own children?
It's a good question. I would program my kids with hypnotic things before they go to bed, actually.
Wow.
My son more than my daughter, because I spent my daughter was born later. She spent more time with my wife. And so I would actually, before we go to bed, I would say actually what we learned from Tony Robbins, which was God's wealth is circulating in my life. His wealth flows to me in avalanches of abundance. All my needs, desires, and goals are met instantaneously by the infinite intelligence. I am one with God, and God is everything. And so I would literally repeat that over to him. And that was on the abundant side of things. And then I would also say, day by day, in every way, I'm getting smarter, stronger, healthier, happier. And I would just repeat these things over and over again when they were in their theta state. And so that's right before they're going to bed, or when they wake up, or even while they're sleeping sometimes when they're supposed to be getting up, I'd just say this stuff to them, or I'd say, I'd sing a song. I love you. Mommy loves you. Grams loves you. Everybody loves you. Everybody loves. So I just build this into their mind that, and this programming. And I started doing that with my son in the womb, actually. I started doing that and reading in the womb.
I used to read to him in the womb as well.
Yeah,
yes.
and with my daughter, I still did that, but it was a lot less because I was going through like a tough time with business. And I just had less time. And we find out that the first child gets the most attention always, which is why they, like all the astronauts are firstborn children. I have another theory for that,
I didn't know
too.
that fact. That's an interesting fact.
Yeah, so all the astronauts, like 95% of them are firstborn children. And Thomas Sowell talks about this. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
No, but
he talks about that. He's a guy you definitely want to look up. If there's one person that has been kept obscure from the media that should be on the front lines of the media, it's Thomas Sowell. He's got an amazing background. But he talks about the astronauts. And he talks about it because they get more attention. I believe that's part of it, that the firstborn gets more attention. But I also believe that the firstborn is also getting more life force from the mother, right? It's their first child. They have more energy, so there's more life force. So that's my theory on that. But anyways, so that's how I started the programming. And then I know that they're great mimickers. And so I try to limit what they watch, because they will mimic what they watch, no matter what it is. And so the iPad's only on the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
I try to limit what they've seen. I know that, I caught my son watching some stuff that I was kind of mortified that he found out about it. I think a friend showed him something, and we had this little...
Pornographic in nature?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was tough for me because he was 8 years old.
Right.
And
so you're afraid of what does that mean now to his brain? How does it affect him?
Yeah, I mean...
For sure, a big concern.
Absolutely, because I know what he saw and what he was watching and what the
history,
clicks went down.
Yeah.
And I was like, no. And so I just had to let it go. I had stuff happen to me earlier, and I had a conversation with him about it. So I saw my first pornographic stuff when I was 5.
Wow.
But it was different. It was Playboy.
Yeah, it was way different when I grew up. So I found my dad's magazine was Playboys when I was like, 10, 11.
Yeah.
But that was soft porn,
Yeah.
which is not nearly what porn is today, which is...
Yeah,
right
when
away,
you see it in video and you see some of the stuff now...
It's very dangerous because, and I might screw up the number, but I think something about like 70% of all internet traffic is pornography.
Yeah.
Which is mind-blowing. How much...
They can't get rid of that for some reason, but they can get rid of all the other stuff.
Yeah, it's still available on Twitter, X, like all that, still available there. But, even when they used to censor it prior to the Elon era,
right?
You would have that there, but they would censor people like Jay Bhattacharya, the professor from Stanford, and his stance, like they would censor that. Yeah. But pornography is just fine, guys.
Yeah.
Which is mind-blowing. But, when it comes to behavior formation with kids, I've discovered an amazing tool. So this book right there, Tiny Habits by Dr. B.J. Fogg.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Also out of Stanford. Taught me, and I basically can now shape my kids' behavior. I taught my daughter how to play chess from 2.5 years old. Yeah. So she doesn't understand the strategy, but she knows how to play, and she plays it almost every day.
Gotcha.
I got Sky hooked on reading daily. Like, he reads nonstop every day.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so it's basically the same 3-step process to everything, and I'll describe it to you very shortly right now. Yeah. So first step, like it's called the B.J. Fogg behavior model. Anybody listening to it right now, please look that up. It'll blow your mind how you can actually shape behaviors. So it's very simple because on the y-axis you have your desire, on the x-axis you have your ability. Mm-hmm. So basically what it says is when your motivation is high, you'll do things that are difficult. When your motivation is low, the behavior will not happen. Right? The difficult things you will never do. You're only going to do things that are easy.
Right.
So we have to understand that. And what we have to do is we have to make it, first of all, easy for them to do because they have no motivation for it. They're not interested in reading right now, right? They don't know the importance of reading. So what we did is we created this library here. In his own room, he's got shelves on his level. Yep. There is a beanbag chair. There's good lighting. So it's always easy for him
Creating
to read.
the environment.
Yes. So first you got to create what I call the CAN environment. CAN stands for comfort, autonomy, and novelty
Yep.
when it comes to books, because novelty is important. Our brain is wired for the new,
Right.
right? So you have to create the environment as first step.
Right.
Second step is resetting their dopamine levels to baseline by boredom. Boredom is a long forgotten parental trick
Yep.
that people have. They overburden their kids with like all this stimuli and input right now,
Yeah.
instead of remembering what boredom, how important it is. When kids get bored,
Yep.
there's plenty
Magical
of studies on
things
that.
happen.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
introspection, curiosity spikes up.
Yeah.
They get bored. They want to do things.
Do you know Paul Chek?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
He attributes all of his success to him being sent to his room at 7 years old with nothing. And he would actually just go into these meditative states, and he started like leaving his body at a young age.
I didn't know
7
that.
years old. And that's how he attributes a lot of his success, is being able to do that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So those are the first two steps. You have to create the environment where it's easy for them to do, right? So you kind of like set that up first.
Yep.
Then you board them. What I would just unplug the router. There's no internet.
Right.
The internet doesn't work. That's it. So the kids get bored out of their minds. And then they're like, all right, what do I do? Well, there's all these books on all kinds of topics that might interest you.
Yeah.
So you just sit down and start reading. And the third step is very important. I learned it from Huberman. This is from Dr. Robert Sapolsky from Stanford. It's called random intermittent reinforcement.
Okay.
So instead of like rewarding all the time,
Yep.
you reward occasionally.
Right.
So this is what casinos use. This is why casinos are so addictive to people, because occasionally you freaking win.
Yep.
You can't win every time because
You
they go
get that
bankrupt.
hit.
But if you never win, you're also not going to go back. But because you occasionally win, you get flushed with, I think his research showed 400% of baseline dopamine when you occasionally win. And that occasional win is what drives that behavior again and again and again. So what we would do with Sky is we would reward him, not every time he would read, but like on a second time. And we would make a big deal about that.
Randomly.
Yeah, randomly. Hug him, kiss him, let's go out for ice cream, like make a big deal about this.
Yep.
So any behavior you want to shape, those are the three steps. Create, like with Luna, I would set up the chessboard,
Yeah.
set up all the pieces, and I would just sit there, right? And nothing for her to do. She would get bored out of her mind.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, Dad is sitting there. Might as well go do something with him. She'd come, and then we'll just start moving pieces, and Natalia would just like run in and start hugging and kissing her.
Yeah.
Boom. She's just dopaminergic, neurowired now to play chess.
Yep.
So and that like is so she's no idea about strategy of the game,
Right.
right? Not yet. She's just turned 4 today. Today is her birthday, but she plays with me. She knows how to move the figures. She's learning about how to move different figures. They move differently. So now she's learning about the strategies. I let her win sometimes, and every once in a while we make a big deal about this.
Right.
Because we've learned that, well, we always believe that chess is a huge game for kids.
Absolutely.
It teaches you how life really works. It teaches you to think 5-6 steps ahead. It teaches you how the opposition moves. Like it's mimicking of life. And Sky actually is, his coaches told me that they think he's that great of a player, not mostly, but in part because he anticipates. Most of kids his age, they chase the puck.
Yep.
He is always where the puck is going to end up.
That's what I tell my son all the time.
He doesn't chase the puck. He like analyzes the play and he just goes to where he anticipates it to be.
Yep.
That's all from the chess.
Yep.
That's all from playing chess every day. We hired him afterwards. Of course, we hired him a professional instructor out of Moscow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Who would he would go with him right now because of the war. He moved out of Moscow. He doesn't do it as much.
Gotcha.
But prior to the war starting, he was work with Sky 5 times a week.
Wow.
Yeah, 5 times a week.
Online.
Sky would wake up at 5 to 7. The lesson would be at 7 in the morning.
Wow.
So when he used to go to school before we pulled him out, he would go 7 to 8 o'clock every morning, 3 times a week,
Wow.
and then twice on the weekends. Weekends was a group lessons,
Yeah.
but one-on-one, 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday and Sunday were group lessons.
That's amazing.
Sky
I
did
should,
it for
I should
years.
do that. I need to do that.
Highly recommend. And again, you can get your kids hooked on it by following these 3 steps,
Yeah.
right? So it's creating the environment where then boring them out of their mind, and then random intermittent reinforcement.
Yep.
Dr. Robert Sapolsky formula. Not every time.
Yeah.
Occasionally, make a big deal about that.
Right.
Make a big deal about, oh, because you did this, whatever they want, whatever makes them super excited.
Right.
Right? You do that. Like whatever it is, water park, ice cream trip, doesn't matter. So
Yep.
for them, it's like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
And their brain gets neurowired.
Yep.
Let's talk about the 0 to 7 part, because that's really interesting to me, because I had to, when I've learned of neurobiology, Natalia was way ahead of me on this stuff, way ahead of me. But in the beginning, we had fights because my parents and her parents, she would actually isolate kids from them. Because she learned it way before me that because they don't have a bullshit filter yet, because the 0 to 7 stage, they take everything as is. A lot of these limiting beliefs grandparents give to their kids. Because like in your book, you talk about like this money beliefs, the limiting money beliefs. Grandparents will say stupid shit like money doesn't grow on trees. It's hard to get. And then they wonder why kids struggle making money when they grow up.
Absolutely.
Right? So Natalia knew that from get-go. And she would always tell me, no, I'm not letting you go there without me. You know, you're not taking the kids there. And I would fight with her. I'm like, come on, these are grandparents. They deserve a chance to be with their kids. She's like, I don't give a shit. Not until they're 7. After they're 7, do whatever you want. Because at this point, I've programmed them the right way.
Exactly.
And the impact the grandparents have is almost 0. In terms of the limiting beliefs.
Actually, it's negative usually. Like my wife would get mad because sometimes I wouldn't want her around her mother. Because hopefully she won't hear this, because she has a lot of limiting beliefs. Like my kid would go to touch something and she'd go, ew, don't touch it. And I'd be like, do not say that to my son. Do not tell them. Like I want him to touch it. And it would be like some insect or something. Now, obviously there's within reason, but it was
non-dangerous insects. Go ahead and touch it. Man.
We want him to engage in curiosity and be open. And so, exactly. I understand. Absolutely.
So you had the same struggle with
I've had the same
limiting access to grandparents.
Absolutely. And with the money thing, that's why I would do that abundance thing, because I wouldn't want him to grow up with this mindset of money, that it's limited. And so actually when they would find money, I would have them say, and I learned this from the Millionaire Mindset, which was, I'm a money magnet. I'd say, oh my God, you found money. So I'd do the neurobiology thing. I'd wire that like, great job, you just found money, you're a money magnet. And then they, oh, I'm a money magnet. And they just start thinking that way. And so, the wire, things that get fired together get wired together.
Absolutely. When I was talking to Joe Boaler, we met to meet her at the Math Museum in May of this year, and we waited till after her presentation to speak to her. And I told her that we're doing entrepreneurship with kids. And I asked her for her opinion. Now, she's a professor at Stanford, and she's author of multiple books. My favorite is this one, Limitless Mind. She said this phrase to me. She's like, the reason why I love entrepreneurship for kids, Zach, is because what fires together, wires together. So when you kids learn these skills, like she'd give me an example, like when people learn something in abstract, they have no idea how to apply it in real life. Right? The reason why entrepreneurship for kids is so important is because they don't learn in abstract. They learn by doing, and that neural wires that knowledge in an applicable way. So later in life, they can actually apply what they learn, versus her biggest problem with education today is that whatever we teach kids, they don't know how to apply that. You know, she's doing that with math right now. It's kind of gamified approach to teaching math and visualized approach to teaching math. And by the way, her approach is mind-blowing. When I've seen that presentation, like we process math completely different as human beings. The way she would give a problem on the board, and she's like, how do you solve it? Like simple problem, let's say, 300 minus 10. And some people like Natalia, they get to the same result way different than I get to the same result.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's just so mind-blowing.
I know, it is really mind-blowing.
The same result, but people think about getting there completely different.
I know.
So we're all different and you're wired for that. So she told me that phrase. The reason why she loves entrepreneurship for kids is because it fires together, wires together. That when they learn that by doing versus just by learning about it, they actually can apply that later. And you've gotten our book, My Kid Entrepreneur. How did you like that, or did you apply that with your kids? Did you do anything with them?
Oh, I absolutely love it. I took that we took very limited books, and I took that to Nicaragua, and I took it back.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think what's written in that book is essential. Like,
but be taught in every school, right? Common sense.
That needs to be taught to every single kid. It's like, this is what I want my kid to read. That's what I want them to know. And that's what I was talking to you about my new hires when I bring them on, is I would have to re-brainwash them. Like they're thinking, oh, I'm coming into a new job and that this guy is going to pay me because of who I am. It's like, no. Your value is in direct relation to what you get paid. So if you become more valuable, you're going to get paid more, or you'll become more valuable to the company and then you'll get paid more, or however. And so that's why I would have them read books, and it's similar to this, but this is just like the kids version. Right. And so it's like they can relate to this much easier. So every kid should be reading that.
I appreciate you saying that. And this is like stage 1 of entrepreneurship for kids. This is like the beginning level. So in stage 2 now, we've gotten to a point like, okay, Stage 2 of entrepreneurship is really asset building. You have to understand how important assets are. You have to understand the importance of compound interest and investing. And one of the assets we build with kids right now, like you see this book right now that Sky published, that's an asset.
Yep,
right?
absolutely.
When he sells it right now on Amazon, he can log into his seller's account. He can see how many he sold. He see how much money he's making without lifting a finger.
Yep.
Right? The book is there. People order it.
Passive
Amazon
income.
Yeah, Amazon prints it. Amazon ships it. They do all the work. He just gets a residual. That's an asset that will pay for the rest of his life. He learned the value of assets. Now, we're leveraging that. Like right after our interview, he's going to sit down with you for 5-10 minutes, ask you a few questions. We're teaching him the next step of that is like audience building. Because now the economy is different. We have now access to what only used to be reserved for the big boys, the big companies, media. Media is one of the biggest leverages in business building. So audience building should be like a prerequisite also to education in schools, because we're living in an attention economy now. So you need to know how to build your own following, because the best businesses are movement-based. Like look at Apple. Think different. Even not even grammatically correct. Right? That was the whole idea of him, not think differently, but think different. It's like to create a movement of people. And now there are people that are I'm very loyal to Apple for many, many reasons. Not just a superior product, but also Steve Jobs' ideology behind that back in the day was very inspiring to me. We show his speeches to Sky all the time. We actually post clips of that on our social media channels as well. His speeches are very, very important to me. And that's like what stage 2 entrepreneurship for kids is right now that we're going through. And the results are mind-blowing. So these 3 kids, 2 of them, one of them had a problem with TikTok because his parents are very busy at work. So he got access to his own iPhone. He had on TikTok. Now that he learned about the neurobiology of happiness, his TikTok went down like crazy. The other kid, Philip, had a problem with video games. Because he was just a video game junkie. Now that he learned about what it's doing to his brain, by publishing this book and learning about the physiology of happiness,
that
like all
really
this stuff
ingrains in their head. Like that'll be carried with them the rest of their life.
So he's like, ooh, this is not good for me. I like it, but it's not good for me. So how do I, correlate the two? So now he's playing a lot less. And both these kids now, all 3 of them are now learning the stage 2 entrepreneurship, which is asset building, audience building, and leverage. And leverage is like, we live in a world where leverage is available to us now. It used to be not available to entrepreneurs before. And I believe entrepreneurs will run the world eventually because AI is here. AI is literally transforming the amount of output we can do. This is the biggest leverage we have. Naval Ravikant has 4 levers, right? He talks about 4 leverages in business. And I disagree with him, even though I've learned so much from him. I think it's way more than 4. So he lists this. He lists the first 2 are capital and labor, right? Those are permission required. So you have to have permission from other people to either give you money or to hire somebody. They have to agree to work for you, right? Then you have, he says 4 totals. And the next 2 are permissionless, which is code and media. Those are the biggest levers we have, right? Code, he meant by software, like SaaS company, because you can have 1 million customers versus just like 1 or 2 or 3 or however you can handle, right? And media, of course, because you create a media product and then it just there generates views and generates knowledge about you and branding and marketing. But I believe it's more. First of all, before AI came out, I also believe there's a 5th one, which is relationships. Because most of my breakthroughs in business came from personal relationships.
Your net worth is your network.
Not only this, it takes effort to cultivate those relationships. You have to be intentional about that. It doesn't just happen by choice, by accident.
You got to use the skills in the book that influence.
Absolutely. And also Tony Robbins said this amazing phrase about proximity. You have to be always in proximity to people that are bigger and better than you because you never know what will happen. But if you're not in proximity, that will never happen. Right? You have to be like paying for these masterminds, being a part of that community until eventually something will happen. So relationships to me was always the 5th factor. But now I discovered 2 more personally. The 6th one is personal development. Because an entrepreneur that actually works out, meditates, eats right, sleeps well, right, is way more empowered than the same guy with the same leverage who doesn't do these things. Right? That's the 6th one. And now the 7th one is artificial intelligence. Because it's not the same as code. By code, Naval Ravikant talked about like software programs that you can sell 1 million copies of. AI is not that. AI is the 7th lever, I believe, that actually can empower any entrepreneur to be way more productive than he ever could.
If I take the last 15 years of videos that I have about back pain and doing back pain and back pain relief, and I just dump that into an AI, that just started snipping it together and editing and cutting like clips, and they're already doing that. I don't know if you're
We
using
did that. We did that. If you log into Entrepreneur Academy,
Yeah.
we built a chatbot based on everything Gary Vee ever said. Actually, it's called
Really?
Gary Vee AI chatbot. Yeah.
Wow.
So kids can ask Gary Vee anything,
Yeah.
and he answers just like Gary. I'll demonstrate it to you
That's
after we're done with this
crazy.
podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've reached out to Gary. We haven't heard back because it's not technically like maybe he doesn't want it. We're using his name, but I know Gary. I've listened to his content.
Oh, he would love that.
He would love that.
He would.
We just
At
haven't
some
had it.
point, he'll catch
I'm trying to.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get his blessing on it
Yeah.
because we're kind of violating copyright laws, maybe. But I know if Gary would hear about it, he'd be like, "Fuck that, let him do it.
Yeah.
It's for the kids."
Yeah.
We took all his 7 books,
Yep.
uploaded to AI chatbot.
Yep.
We went to all YouTube videos of him doing keynote speeches, took the
Transcribe.
transcripts, uploaded into that thing, and now kids, when they log into the academy, they can just ask Gary Vee anything. That's what it's called. It's called Ask Gary Vee Anything, which is the name of his book. So I know
brilliant.
there's copyright problems there, but like I want to get his blessing on this.
Yeah.
So we reached out already twice. We're going to keep reaching out
Yeah.
until one of his managers actually puts it up to him and say, "Hey, Gary, these guys using your name. Is that okay?"
Yeah.
You know, but I think he would bless that.
Yeah. That's brilliant.
I think he would bless that because kids can, when they log into the academy, they can talk to Gary,
Right.
which is an AI chatbot.
Yeah.
There's another dude that did it with Huberman. It's called Huberman something lab AI.ai.
Yeah.
And he took all of his, which is now 2 years
Yep.
of long form podcasts,
Yeah.
uploaded to an AI, and anybody can just go and look anything up, and Huberman will
What
answer.
AI are they using?
It's all based in ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So we're using a different platform, but it's the back engine is ChatGPT.
Yeah.
It's always ChatGPT. We use 2 AIs. Like this book, kids use ChatGPT to brainstorm and research and also edit, which is phenomenal because they would type in their crooked English,
Yep.
uploaded it, and this would edit for them, right? It's a phenomenal editor.
Oh my God.
And then they would use Midjourney to create images.
Yeah. I've been waiting for this tool my whole life because I'm terrible at grammar and
I
editing.
love it. I love it. I also use it.
Yeah.
You know, I also use ChatGPT to edit my stuff.
Yeah.
I will write it, or I would. Research is amazing.
Yeah.
Because once you pay for the paid version that's connected to the web,
Right.
it is phenomenal. I can actually summarize a huge article.
Yep.
I would just put a link in there, like, please give me the top 10 bullet points.
Yep.
And spits it right out.
Yep.
I do the same with books.
Yep.
If I don't have a time to read a book, or if I want to decide whether I want to read a book,
Yep.
I can just give me the summary of this book, and then I look at it, I'm like, oh, this is actually interesting.
Yep.
I should read this one. You know, so that's a tool, that's a leverage for kids now available to kids. And I think that in the future, if you don't leverage AI, you're going to be way behind.
Oh my God.
You know, I think Dan Billion said that AI will not replace you. A human using AI will replace you.
Right.
You know, I 100% agree with that.
Yep. If you know how to use it faster and better and ask it better questions, you're going to win.
That's all it's about, asking better questions. It's all about prompt engineering. You
Yep.
know, if you don't know how to leverage AI. So we're teaching that now. And the problem we had with the academy, I believe, is that we need to move it to an app. Because parents don't want their kids on laptops and behind screens and logging into stuff. So we need to rebuild it to an app. That's going to be way more user-friendly for
That's
kids
smart. Yeah.
than to go on online and logging in. So that's where we're at right now with the academy. But the
Gotcha.
idea of academy was basically teaching the principles of the book via video format, short bite video lessons,
Yep.
also assignments, and AI.
Yep.
So there's Gary Vee chatbot built into it, which is super fun, man.
Yeah. It's
To
great.
ask Gary Vee questions
Yeah.
and it just spits out answers.
That's brilliant.
You know, because
Yeah.
he's such a positive person, and
Yeah.
his answer is always so positive. Like if you'd ask him, like, what's the best way to learn entrepreneurship for kids, his answer would be like, find somebody in your neighborhood who does it and go learn from them.
Yeah.
That's what the AI
Absolutely.
says.
Yeah.
You know, go figure this out. Don't, learn by doing.
Yep.
That's what the AI chatbot says. All right, I want to ask you about what do you think on the brain-to-computer interfaces? What is your take? We both agree, right, that it's kind of coming.
The chip.
Yeah, NeuroLink and such.
Yeah, it's going to come. You know what? I've thought a lot about this, and I've listened to Elon, and there's a lot of people that think Elon is like evil, and I think this is my personal opinion at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
It's always changed and it wavers. I think Elon is so far ahead
I agree.
of people that they can't even comprehend. Like, he must just look at everybody like,
Dumbskis.
yeah, like they just
100%.
don't know what they're talking
Yeah,
about.
he has to dumb himself down to speak to humans.
Exactly.
Because he understands that if he speaks to him the way he thinks, we're not going to understand a single word he's saying.
Yep. He
So-
knows the future, and he knows that if we don't compete, if we don't have something like this, it could be the end of our civilization.
Do you know why he created NeuroLink?
I don't know.
He was on Joe Rogan's about
Yeah.
5-6 years
I
ago.
remember watching that. Yeah.
So on that episode, he said this: when he realized how fast AI will learn
Right.
and how powerful it will be,
Yes.
he
I remember
realized that we can't beat him. So he tried. He said, "Yeah, I tried to go around
It'd
the
be
world.
like a house cat.
Yeah, I tried to go around the world warning world leaders. He was in Obama's White House office
Yep.
saying, hey, we need to regulate this thing, but nobody would hear him.
Right.
So he realized if you can't beat him, you got to join him.
Yep.
So this is why he started working on NeuroLink, because he realized AI is this potentially existential threat.
Yeah.
Right? We've been living with one existential threat for 80 years now, nuclear weapons.
Right.
But 80 years is nothing on the
like a
span of,
blink.
it's a blink, not even a blink in history, right?
Yep.
So what's 80 years?
Yeah.
We can wipe ourselves out, and it looks like we have done that before.
Yeah.
According to like guys like John Graham now, who talk about 18,000 years ago.
Yep.
Like to this day, we don't know how the pyramids were built.
Well, they're talking about dinosaurs that they were saying they were millions of years old, and they're not.
Yeah.
These dinosaur bones are like recent.
Well, not only this, we still have dinosaurs living with us, crocodiles and stuff.
Yeah.
They're
Still here.
They're still dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Right. So Elon's mission was like, if we can't beat him, we got to join him in order to be able to survive. Because otherwise, like, there's no telling of how this thing is going to go.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm an optimist by nature. So I want to be optimistic about things that I can't control.
too, yeah.
So I'm like, all right, you know what's here? Better learn how to use it.
Right.
And whatever happens, happens. So his take was on Rogan's when he had that famous moment of smoking the joint and drinking whiskey with
Yeah.
him. That, you know, that's why he created NeuroLink. And of course, in the beginning, it'll be this phenomenal tool for curing neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, because it's all, you know, misfiring of electricity in our brain, all those diseases.
Yeah. I'd be interested to see how it works. I can understand the being able to access information instantly, but I don't know that it would be able to.
You should watch that episode again. So
Yeah.
they just got the authorization to use in humans a couple of months ago.
Right.
But before that, they had it in pigs.
Yeah, they tested someone, right? Did they?
I'm not sure about a human.
They
yet.
have somebody that's going up for it, I think, soon.
Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe because they
Okay.
got the emergency use authorization now finally from FDA
Right.
to actually put it on humans. But they did it before in pigs and monkeys.
Yeah.
So one of the mind-blowing things, if you go to NeuroLink/blog,
Yep.
there's this monkey playing ping pong
Yeah.
on the screen without using a joystick, just using his brain.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that was like 2 years ago.
Oh my God.
That was 2-3 years ago
Yeah.
that demonstration was done. And then they also had some pigs that had some
Wait, so he's playing ping pong on a screen?
on the screen, yeah, on a computer game.
Oh, because the screen is hooked up
yeah,
to his.
yeah, the computer's hooked up to his chip,
Wow.
and the monkey's playing ping pong. I'll show it to you right now after we're done with the
That's
pod.
creepy.
Yeah, so that was already 3 years ago or
Yeah.
2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
That demonstration.
Yeah.
Then they had pigs that had like all these kind of degenerative diseases, brains, and
Yeah.
they fixed them.
Wow.
Because it's like when you have, my grandfather had this disease, not disease, but it's like his heart was offbeat. Arrhythmia.
Yeah.
So they like put a thing, like
Sting.
electric sting into
Yeah.
it and like fixed it right up. So the same kind of approach Elon talks about in the brain.
Yeah.
That certain brain does not work well, certain parts of the brain are misfiring.
Yep.
And we could fix that by sending electrical impulse at a certain time, at a certain level, bang, and
Yeah.
it starts working.
Right.
So that's the whole idea about it. It's so if it works, which
Yeah.
it technically should, because we're not that far away from monkeys and pigs.
Yeah. See that's where it's one of those things where that's not fixing the root of the issue. It'll help. Like, so say,
I see your point.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
I see your point.
My whole purpose and goal of everything is like my back pain program is about fixing at the root of the cause. And maybe we won't be able to ever fix it because there is more toxins and more poisons and poison. So it's a good thing because as we accumulate more metals in the brain, the reason why it's not firing is because lack of minerals
Right.
and metals. And so that's the reason why this stuff is happening. So that's why for me,
I see your point. Yeah, we're just fixing. We're treating it again.
Right.
We're not curing it.
Right. And you need both of those sometimes because some people don't want to do anything. So they just want to plant a chip in their head.
I think with him is just like a way to get his mission, because his mission is not curing diseases.
Right.
His mission is making sure that we're on par with AI.
Right.
Right. So if that's
That's
to him is like, okay, I can't get that permission right away. So first I got to show that there's actual medical benefits to it, that it's safe. So that's like step one.
Yeah.
So on that podcast with Rogan, the first one he did out of, I think, 3 total,
Yeah.
he talked about like by the 5th iteration, like say version 5,
Yeah.
we won't be able to talk to each other anymore. We'll be able to read each other's minds.
Right.
Right. So complete AI symbiosis
Yeah.
is his ultimate goal, because he believes that's the only way to actually not be exterminated by AI eventually.
They already have that technology.
Really?
Yeah. They were studying that in the special forces, like might even be 20 years ago, which means if they were studying it in the special
It's
forces.
implemented today.
Yeah. But here's the thing is we're just going back to how we naturally were. Like if you talk to the Aborigines, they all telecommunicated.
Really?
They would they'd just walk through the bush. They wouldn't speak at all. They'd be communicating through their minds. And that's how we used to be, because we used to be connected through this.
It's interesting you say that.
Our pineal gland is what connects us to the outer world, the unseen, right? That's why they call it like the third eye. And so we can send signals. And that's why there's people that believe that they're literally calcifying the pineal gland so that we can't access this technology. It is technology if you talk about it, if you think about it. And so when your pineal gland's open and then you focus and you do things like meditation, that you will be able to communicate. And there's people that can do it.
To tap into that power.
Yeah, there's people that can do it now.
It's interesting you say that, because we come from chimps, and there was a phenomenal documentary released recently on Netflix called The Chimp Empire.
Oh, I gotta check that out.
Oh my God, you're going to love it.
Yeah, I love it.
So, first of all, it was so well done, this documentary.
Right.
But one of the things that blew my mind is how they attack. When they attack, you have this main chimp going, and then the rest of them just follow. So if he stops, but they don't even see him often, because they're not like lined up as an army in a row. They're just going through the forest. And it seems like they're communicating without communicating.
Telecommunication.
Exactly, like you just talked about.
Yeah.
It seems like they have that power because they understand each other.
Yep.
They know who's got what role to implement and to do it what time.
Yep.
So it seems like they're completely in cohort, like organized group, but yet they're not saying a single word because they don't want the opponent to hear you.
Yeah, we know that the animals do that. Like they'll teach a rat in the U.S. how to go through a maze. And once you teach it a certain amount of times, like it'll automatically happen to the rats in Japan, and they'll learn without communicating. It's just like their DNA. It's like their DNA just upgrades.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's like a network that. Yeah.
So there's definitely a way. Plus, it's like we don't know. Like for instance, let's say if rats, not rats, but like if ants, they have no hearing. They just don't know what they're missing.
Right.
Right. So maybe we have something that is not. We don't know how to use it, so we don't know we're missing it.
Right.
Simply because we don't know how to use it. We have it, but we don't know. So the last thing I want to ask you about, like, you know so much about nutrition. How do you apply that knowledge to your kids? Like, do you feed them grains?
It's a tough one for me. Like, we were hardcore in the beginning, and we had no gluten. We were eating all healthy. And then we sent our kid to preschool, and we got a call from the teacher. And they said, your kid is digging through the trash to eat the candy because they would have snacks, and we'd say, we don't want them to eat the snacks because it would all be sugar and crap. And so we'd send them. And so we were like, all right, well, there's got to be a balance, because once he had sugar, now he knew what it tasted like. And then all of a sudden he became this like ravenous kid digging through trash. And so we had struck a balance.
Compromise.
And so... And then it got to a point where I unintentionally programmed my kid wrong. So this is like, I didn't mean to do it this way, but my kid finally would be like, is that healthy? And I'd be like, yeah, it's pretty healthy. And he'd be like, I don't want it. And I'd be like, damn it. Like this was at a young age. And so he associated everything healthy that didn't taste good. And of course he's a kid and he just wants things that are good for his palate. And so he doesn't understand like what I'm teaching him about health.
Not yet.
So, anyways, that's kind of where I have to figure out how to reprogram it now.
I see.
And I'm in that stage.
What is your take on these microbiome tests? Have you done that?
Yeah, I've done those tests.
We've done it with Sky.
Yeah.
And I think it helped.
Yeah.
When we adjusted for it.
Yeah.
But it showed some weird stuff, like he shouldn't eat eggs. Which is like a cornerstone of a healthy meal.
Yeah.
Right? Eggs. But it's not good for him, supposedly, according to the microbiome test. I understand what they said. Don't feed him grapes. Like grapes not good for him. That's fine.
Yeah.
I get it. That's like a sugar.
Which test did you do?
We did Viome.
Yeah. I got to interview, I'm going to blank on his name.
The founder?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we did Viome.
I don't know if you know his story. But,
No.
oh my God. You got to study him, man.
Okay. I'm going to invite him to the podcast.
One of the best success stories coming to America I've ever heard, actually.
Immigrant? First
Yeah,
generation
he
immigrant?
came with nothing. He's a billionaire.
Wow.
Yeah, he came
That's
from
awesome.
India with flip-flops. And yeah, so...
I love those stories.
Shoot, I can't remember. I'm blanking on his name.
I'll look it up right now.
Yeah.
Look it up right now.
But I did that test, and I would say that it's missing some pieces.
Naveen Jain?
Naveen Jain, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's got a pretty powerful story. And a very, I don't want to say intense, but he gets you motivated. I've seen him speak on stage. He was at Joe Polish. Are you familiar with Joe Polish's work?
No.
Oh man, you should check him out. He's Genius Network.
I'll be going through this podcast with the calm and
Yeah,
picking out the names that you mentioned.
Yeah, so Joe Polish runs one of the best marketing podcasts. He's been doing that for probably almost 20 years now, with Dean Jackson, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I got to see Naveen Jain speak on stage, and then I got to interview him afterwards, and we spoke about Viome, and that's when I took the test. And for me, it didn't really give me much insight, because now what I know is that I was so loaded with parasites. When your immune system gets compromised, your body just gets run over by these parasites and these microbes and these funguses, and it didn't tell me any of that.
I see.
And so, and this is for the extreme case, which is
so
me.
the advice would be first cleanse yourself and then do the test?
Probably.
Probably.
And
right? That's a logical conclusion we can come to.
Right. Yeah.
Because we kind of think of like we should do it again now. Because when we did the test, he was not eating well. And now we're like, okay, we fixed his diet a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do it again now to see if it's going to be a different result now.
And everything changes.
That's
so it's
point.
like the chemical stew that is you right now will be 100% different tomorrow morning. And so if you eat eggs every single day, by the third week, you will now have antibodies for the egg protein. So your body will now want to kind of reject it. You might eat it and taste it like it's good, but your body will actually kind of reject it.
That is so interesting. So that microbiome test is really kind of biased to what you had in your system for the last few days.
Well, see, I don't even know if that's true, because I don't know if it's testing allergens. So that's the thing is there's so much to it. It's like, it's not just, you can't just look at your microbiome. It's like this whole picture. And that's why in my book, I just talk about intuitive eating, because if you stay connected to yourself and you stay connected to your body and you don't just ignore everything like most people do, you'll start to notice when I eat that, I start to have like a cough,
mm-hmm.
and I start to feel sluggish, right? Or does it give you energy and feel energized without the adrenaline? Like, if you're super allergic to something, you might not have the anaphylactic issue, but you might get higher heart rate, and you might get like more intense and aggravated. And so you'd feel how you feel. Now, if there's foods that you eat and you're like, oh, I feel pretty good about this. Like I had to become that, because I was like a tuning fork almost for the food. Like I had cells that would literally shake when I eat certain foods. And so I could literally feel what was affecting me. Whereas most people can't feel that. So I was able to hone in on the foods that I was able to eat, and I try to vary it because of the microbiome. But that's why intuitive eat, like if you don't have all these tests and all these tools, all these things,
just rely on your intuition, how it affects you.
Yeah.
When you eat, how it
and your
you
intention. Like the intention of you cooking the food and cooking your own food changes the structure of it. We know that if I hold this water here and my intention is to send a prayer to it, it'll change the structure of the water. And then you change that structure of water, and then
that's because of the frequencies our brains emit, something like that?
Yeah. I mean, that's like, if you know Dr. Emoto's work,
no,
Healing Water, he talks about he would freeze the water. So for example, he'd take like a bottle like this and he'd put a word on it, and then he'd freeze the water, and then he'd take a picture of the water. And so the water would produce an image. And if he put like love on it, it would create this beautiful
Really?
snowflake. If you put hate, it would create this distorted consciousness, like it would just look ugly. He would do it with music. He'd play heavy metal music, and it would be just distorted. And then he'd play like folk music, and it'd have this beautiful snowflake. He put thank you
I
on
was
it.
so much affected by everything. It reminded me of this joke you mentioned in your book, which I, by the way, tweeted yesterday because I loved it so much, is that the joke in the mental health field, before you get diagnosed with depression, make sure you're not surrounded by assholes.
Right.
But it's so true. There's like energy vampires
Absolutely.
that you hang around these people, you feel like shit afterwards.
Yeah.
And there are people that are like, they're considered the heart of the company, heart of the group. It's like,
Yeah.
you hang around them, like you feel better.
Yeah.
They energize you. They make you laugh. And
Yep.
you leave them like, oh my God, I love that guy.
Yep.
You know, I guess it's all about the frequencies that people
And
emit.
that's exactly what you talked about joining masterminds.
Yeah.
When I come out of my business and I'm surrounded by people and I go to a mastermind and you feel the energy, you're on like this high. It's like, whoa, there's people out here like me, who think like me, who are thinking like pushing and want to elevate.
One of the three things, the three main components that makes us entrepreneurs, forgot the name of that lady. She was doing a speech on that, but she is behind one of the biggest venture capital firms in Silicon Valley. So there's three things identified that separate successful entrepreneurs from not successful. So so those three things. First one is you got to know a little bit about everything.
Right.
Because you have to just be able to brainstorm and put pieces together, right?
Yep.
The second
Connect
thing
dots.
the second thing was being surrounded by like-minded people.
Mm-hmm.
They'll support you on the journey versus the ones that'll tell you, oh, don't fucking do that shit, or yeah, you'll never succeed.
Right.
And the third is having the right mentors that have been there, done that can shortcut your path. Look, Ian, man, thanks a lot for coming. I really appreciate it. This was awesome. I wish we can do it again, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be here for another 3 weeks. So if you want to do it again, let me know.
I'd love to, man. So we'll pick that up. Thank you so much for coming. And
It's a pleasure.
Man, this was awesome. Thank
Thanks
you
for having me.
My pleasure.